Okay. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to this current webinar in our series of bi-weekly webinars on timely and important environmental topics. I'm Jay Shofet. I'm coming to you from New York at the moment, the Beacon Hotel where we usually stay. I'm here with Dan Alone, our CEO. We've been traveling around the States for the last couple of weeks, and I'll be here for another couple of weeks. Dan's heading back today to run the organization, and it's been a great couple of weeks. I think we've seen many of you. Yes, please let us know where you're from in the chat. Hi from Modi'in, and yeah, hi to the AI chat. That's a new one. Uh, Lets us know that they're taking notes in the chat. Michal, maybe you have something to say about that. We have Dr. Michal Bitterman here. I'll introduce her in a moment when everybody gets on. People are still joining. Hello from West Michigan and West Bloomfield, New Mexico, where we were. Maybe you had a chance to meet Rachel, our director in North America. We were just at a board retreat of our Nature Israel American Friends of in Santa Fe. Had a great time there. We've been to LA, San Francisco, Toronto, and now New York. I'm off to Boston, Chicago, and Philadelphia. So we're covering a lot of ground here and happy that everybody's joining us for this webinar on Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there and the mother figures and the grandmothers. We really, I don't know, we couldn't do that without you. Walking around Manhattan today, the flower business is doing very, very well. All the flower shops have moved their operations outside to the sidewalks where they have tables set out. It looks like the Shook on a Friday, basically, the Carmel Market. Anyway, yeah, Michal, somebody's writing that your camera lens might be a little blurry. I was kind of wondering about that too. I like the soft filter, but oh, I think that's better. Yeah, it looks better.
Wow, thanks.
Yeah.
Where did I get that recommendation from? Where?
I don't know. It's on the chat there somewhere. I was going to
Okay,
mention it,
thanks.
but yes. So welcome everybody from far and near. Michal's a new first-time guest, long-time caller, first-time guest here on the on our webinars. Michal, we usually have people, a lot of people from America, Canada, and Israel, but from England and occasionally from. Let's just say I'll be disappointed if our friend from Belgrade is not with us. But I'm missing some of these things. Hi from Skokie, Bobby. Looking forward to seeing you in a couple days. Well, in a week, I'll be in Skokie, and Barbara and Newton. Maybe I'll see you in Newton. Maybe at my wife's event. My wife is Dina Sussman, cookbook author. She's on a book tour right now, and I'm meeting her in Newton tomorrow night or Tuesday night, one of those nights. Um, Anyway, I think it's about time to get going. 4 minutes after the hour. I am very thrilled to have a very old friend and acquaintance of mine, Michal Bitterman, a colleague. Michal is a true Renaissance woman in the environmental field. She's touched and touches a lot of different areas of environmental protection, sustainability. Um, uh, I learned a lot from her back when I was a novice professional environmentalist about sustainability and working with businesses and life cycle of things and all kinds of interesting things she's dealing with. Food insecurity in Israel, which is another big topic which doesn't get enough play. Peace parks is another thing that Michal has been involved in, which seems very far right now. But I'll tell you, Michal, you probably know we have rewilded wetlands on the Jordan River, and we've been in touch with General Mansour Abu Rashid, head of the Amman Center for Peace and Democracy. If the government change, when the government changes, and if the government changes, we are ready to go. The Jordan River Water Authority and the Jordan Water Ministry have all approved this project to have an actual cross-border wetland, not yet a peace park.
Hmm.
And I think that part of the Jordan is kind of it's loaded. But to have on two sides of the tiny, few meters wide Jordan River, two thriving wetland habitats, one, supported by the Jordanian Water Ministry and one by us. Think that would be very exciting. And, maybe in a future book you'll write about it, it can have a chapter. We think we're doing good work. But anyway, let's turn it over to you because you have so much to talk about. I'm so excited. I mean, I've heard your TED Talks and want to just welcome you and let you know we're all here to be entertained and to learn a lot, I'm sure. And we'll have questions. People, please write your questions in the Q&A feature if they come up, and we'll get to them at the end. If there's anything crucially that we need to know real time, I'll probably interrupt you, but mostly go for half an hour or so, and we'll talk in a bit. So thank you very much, Michal.
Okay.
Thanks everybody for joining on Mother's Day from wherever you are, morning, noon, or evening. I really appreciate it. As toda yalla.
Thanks, Jay. So I'm very excited being here, and good evening from Israel, from Jaffa, where I live. Um, I'm excited because not only to be speaking before this audience, also Jay, because it made me go back to our previous talks. Back then, I don't know how many years ago, when we were sitting and talking about backcasting and how backcasting can be something that could be really useful and how to bring it from Sweden to here. And we were talking about peace parks, and really I wanted to say that it was like really great talking with someone that believed, didn't think I was very naive, and did see something that could really work in Israel, though we're very, far away in many senses in the things that I will be talking. But you saw the way how backcasting, how peace parks, which I would be happy to talk about it later, could really work, and if not work immediately, could be some kind of agenda and hope and everything. So thank you. You were a huge supporter, and really, Jay, you were one of the first people that I met when I came back from Sweden for my master's, and I had a lot of ideas how to implement sustainability here. And I must say that it was a huge gap between, the fabulous things that I saw in Sweden and coming back to Israel, and it was like I needed to narrow the gap. And during the years, I think that many things happened. I narrowed the gap. Maybe I became more Israeli than what is happening in Sweden. Who knows? So Jay actually I asked me to talk today about my personal journey and also about a few issues, and mainly I will focus about the food system. And I will start my talk, and really feel free to chat and ask questions. Jay, you can interfere if you want. It will be fabulous, especially since I'm talking to myself. So that would be
Okay.
great. I will go back to 7th of October. I will start there. 7th of October was what's supposed to be a very exciting day. I was supposed to have a picnic and a birthday party for my youngest son, Nitai, and everything was really prepared, and we were all ready and everything to go, and we had this, the tour and everything that we wanted to do. And then around 6:30 plus minus, we were kind of, Nitai and myself were kind of already awake, the sirens, and it was like, a huge surprise. And I was like, what's going on? Sirens. I screamed to my couple, come on, wake up, sirens. Took my other son, and we ran to the shelter, to the mamad, and following it, 13, 14 sirens, one after another. And at the beginning, we still thought, oh, maybe we'll go to a picnic, maybe we'll not, maybe we'll be in sympathy with other places in Israel that are already in some kind of thing that we didn't even understand what they were. But I would say around noon, we all understood that, everything changed, and the situation that we knew will no longer be existing. And it took a few days to actually understand what is going on. But a few days afterwards, I understood that, let's say, what I did for the last 10 years or even more prepared me for that moment. And I felt that after years of screaming, we need food security. We don't have food security in Israel. We will never be, completely, we can't be so dependent and everything. It was like screaming, to the world, but no one was really catching it. And suddenly it happened. It started collapsing in front of my eyes. And it led me a few days after the war started to start the Israelis for Blue and White Agriculture. And basically, Israelis for Blue and White Agriculture was something that I felt that was extremely needed. Small farmers that lost everything. They lost everything. It started from the south, then it became more of a project of the north. But immediately, they lost all their supply chain. They didn't have anyone to sell to. The market, everything was collapsing. There was a huge chaos. And beside all that, all their, people that worked, their families and everything, there was a huge collapse of all the system in the food security. And what we did in the Israeli Blue for White agriculture, I can sell that. I can say that till that moment, I never sold any tomato in my life, or I never really worked a lot with volunteers. I mean, what both of my projects and the organizations that I founded were never about really massive work of volunteers, but there was no time. We couldn't hesitate. So I took a few people and we started Israelis for Blue White Agriculture. And within 3 days, we had three different project groups, and we had more than 60. Afterwards, it was more than 120 people. That what they did was basically find the small farmers, the ones that you can't find. You can't find them in Google Sheets and not in the Ministry of Agriculture. They are the ones that are working really on small scales, and to find them and say to them, "Hi, we're here. We want to help you. We want to help you sell your products." And then on the one hand, to help them and to help them to really be able to sell and not lose all their economic security. And on the other hand, we wanted people, all of us were in war. Everyone, a lot of people lost their jobs, and we all need food even during times of war, to really be able to access food in accessible in normal prices, let's say, that are very fresh. And what we did is to have those markets. I don't know if some of you saw those markets or you were in Israel at that time, but we were able during this time of a few months to have more than 70 markets around Israel, from south to north, and really make these connections and sell a lot of fruits and vegetables and so on. And the project, that was the first phase of the project. And then when we saw that that was not needed anymore, it was around a few months during, I would say around February, when the market already started to move again and things were open and they could already go back and sell, to their usual supply chain. We started the next phase. And the next phase was to help the farmers, the small farmers and business food in the north, which were really struggling, and by the way, are still really, really struggling, and create those packages that will be sent abroad. And again, I had no experience in exporting anything, but we had this kind I had this kind of urgency and feeling that it would be great if people from North America and from Europe will be able to have food from Israel, and really, really good food from small farmers that really know what they do, because it's very basic, it's very connected to the land, and that they could support Israel not by money and not by different a lot of support was by different organizations and philanthropy and so on, but really get something, also a value for their table, for whether it's Pesach or it started in Pesach, following it was already in New Year's and so on, but get valuable food to their table, and that it will be kind of food will be kind of connector. And this is what we were doing. And the minute that we saw that is not needed anymore and things kind of got back to the routine, we stopped it, and now we're in the next stage. But what I want to say from what I learned from this enterprise were two really strong things, which basically I knew them, but it was really something that was very strong. First is that people are looking for this kind of connection. We're not connected. We lost connection. We lost a lot of us connection to land. We lost connection to where, our food is raised and who is raising our food. And suddenly, when you have a direct market and you see in your own eyes the farmer that grew your food, you can speak with him, you can talk about his problems and what he was going through. People created a connection, and it really started to create a community and a kind of connection for them and also for the food. And this is something that I'm working a lot with around, and I'll talk about it later on nature. And by the way, everyone here, I guess, are working a lot about it on connecting people back to the sources, back to nature and so on. But this is something that is very, very let's say, major in the work of connecting back the youth and people to the sources to understand where our food is actually being produced and how the whole life cycle. The second thing is,
Can I just ask a quick
yeah,
question?
yeah,
Since
yeah.
you, well, so who are these small farmers that nobody knows about? And where were they selling things before October? What was their supply chain before October 7th?
It was for different, how do you say it, distributors,
Yeah.
panim, for different kind of restaurants. For all the events were canceled.
Oh,
So
but
all
so
of the
supermarket, they weren't selling to Israeli supermarkets.
no, the ones
Gotcha.
that were selling to Shufersal, to Rami Levy and everyone, they don't needed us. I
That
mean,
okay.
they were okay, and we
Okay.
still continue to go there. I mean, Israelis still went to the supermarkets, but all of those were really the problem was that all the market was, we didn't have anything. We didn't have any events or restaurants or anything.
Right. Gotcha.
And the thing is that I also understood very well the farmers that you can't reach them. They're not answering a Google form
Right.
or submitting themselves. You need to find them and really say, hey, we want to help you and so on. So the second thing was that food could be a connector. And food can be a connector, whether it's between North America to Israelis, or whether it's within Israel. But it could be another channel to connect to the land and connect to the one to the another. And it really, I can show you a short film of like what we did, but this thing really reminded me of the source why I got to sustainability from the first place. Because the first place that I love nature, I love hiking, I went a lot all my life, but I never was an environmentalist like many others that I assume that are here in this talk. But what connected me was actually when I finished the bar examinations and I decided not to be a lawyer. I went to Georgia and Turkey, and I was like really traveling to places that were very abandoned and not a lot of tourists back then were visiting. And I remember the minute that I was like sitting in Georgia and saying to myself, something is different here. It's weird. It looks different. It is really, it sells different. I mean, even the agriculture, the architecture, everything is really quite different. I looked at people that were quite, they were low economic. Let's say, if you need to divide them, they were not rich. They were kind of poor. They hosted in their family. They took the children outside of the room and gave us place to sleep there. And I was like asking myself, how come they look more happy? How come they look happy in a place that is actually much less rich and doesn't look very different? It looks very different than what is in Israel. And why in Israel do we build everything that looks the same? Why do we have all those high rises? Like everything looks the same. And it really bothered me during the whole trip. And I didn't know back then sustainability what it is. I'm not even sure when sustainable. I mean, it wasn't even a word in Israel back then. And I was like, okay, something went wrong. We disconnected. We disconnected from the land. We're disconnected from where we live. And that led to the path to go to Sweden and do my master then in Sweden. And my master's, I was the first Israeli in this master, so I didn't know what I'm going to. And when I went there and did the course, I can say that it was such an eye-opening experience. I was like, wow, there is a huge thing that happens in the world. How come I didn't know about it to that extent so far? And how can we really change it? And I remember that two things were really, really very present, at Sweden. The first thing was that we have quite a huge challenge, but the second is that we can actually fix it also. So when I came back, I started the Israel Green Building Council because that was the original reason why I went to Sweden, because the built environment was really fascinating for me, and we really did that. If someone is interested, we can talk about green building and so on. And the second, again, Jay, that we mentioned a bit at the beginning was my PhD around peace parks. How can we take the sustainability and make sustainability be a connector and kind of shift the paradigm? And although it seems to be really naive today and after the war, and we're still in war, and I don't know, everyone will say differently if we are in the war, after the war, it doesn't matter. But it doesn't matter the situation. Still, we are in a situation that thinking about a peace park could be really naive, but at the same time, countries did it like North Korea, South Korea, the Green Belt, places in Africa, and so on. So maybe it's a question I'm, spreading whether, yeah, can we actually stop talking about the conflict and talk about something else because talking about the conflict is quite blocking, and we're blocked there. So that's if that would be interesting, we can definitely talk about Bisparcks afterwards. Um, but I wanted to lead to what I originally wanted to talk is about the food system. So when I finished the Israel Green Building Council, I felt that I'm very fascinating in looking at systems. And the second system would be the food. And why food? Because food is a huge system. It's not another commodity. We need food. We love food. We don't like food. It doesn't matter what we feel about food. We need it, and it's a basic human need. And every society needs to have food. And what I found when I started looking at what does a sustainable food system look like, that the food system has a lot of problems and a lot of environmental, social, and economic problems, and in general sustainability problem, but at the same time it's not really treated. And you said it, you mentioned it a bit, but it's not really treated, and it's not something that we really tackle. And that's why already for around more than 10 years I'm trying to work on the food system. And I will show a very short presentation, like for 10 minutes, and then we can continue on different um, questions. I will pass this. This is about the what I talked earlier about Israelis for blue and white agriculture, but I see the hour, so I'm running. So basically, if I need to make it really, really simple, then we see that we have a decrease of topsoil and erosion of land. I guess that a lot of things I will say now are environmental challenges that people here are aware of, loss of natural habitat, and we see it rainforests around the world. And of course, we see that we have a lot of loss of biodiversity, overfishing, extinction of species, especially in Israel. We see it, it's really a problem. But at the same time, we have many people on Earth. We have 7.8 billion. We have even more. We have in Israel, it's growing population. So if we have more people, we need to feed them. We need the food system that will feed them. And if we need to mark another phenomenon, then we say that we have decreases in natural resources. We have increase in the amount that we need of food, but at the same time, we see that the food amount per capita is growing higher. It means that people are consuming more food per person. So we need more food, we have less resources. And if we want to quantify it according to greenhouse gases, then you see that the whole system of the food system is around 30% of greenhouse gases. And the food system is a huge, huge system. It's the growing of it, and then in the farming, processing, packaging, transportation, retailer, and then what we do at our houses and how we treat it. And while we say all of that, yeah,
Michal, just
yeah.
a quick suggestion. You have a comment about if you could speak just a little more slowly, please.
Ah,
I,
yeah.
I'm a New Yorker and I'm in New York. It sounds slow to me, but I maybe,
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
know.
of course. And so we said that there are decreases of natural resources. There is an increase of people on the globe, and we are only one planet. And the amount of food that each one of us is consuming is higher, the amount of food and natural resources, of course, that are connected. At the same time, if I'm not, Jay, if the comment comes back, then say it again, okay? If I
Okay.
started to speak again. But at the same time, when we look at the numbers, we see that we're throwing a lot of food. So this is kind of the figure of, the amount that we're throwing globally every year, which is 1.3 billion tons of food. But at the same time, let's say if we don't want to see it as numbers, then it's a one third of the food that we're producing that is going away and going to the garbage. And the real tragedy, I can say, at least in Israel, is that half of the food, when we were throwing it, was perfectly fine, nutritious, perfectly good. We could have eaten it. So one third of what we eat, what we produce and transport and sell, and then we need to treat it as garbage, is perfectly fine when we throw it and decide that it's garbage. And I was mentioning the greenhouse gas effect, then we see that there is a vicious cycle. On the one hand, food waste creates climate crisis, but at the same time, climate crisis by itself, because it exists, not only because of food waste, but because of everything that control climate crisis, we see that there is more food waste, and it's kind of a feedback loop that we need to stop because it only gives power to one another. That's why I call it a vicious cycle. And of course, there is also the packaging concerning the food and so on. And in that, we can't forget that there is the human factor. The whole food system is one of the systems that employs the more, the amount, the amount of people that is the highest. And we can question ourselves whether the quality of life is good, is it not, is it, it's worthwhile. This is an example from a chicken. If you saw Samsara, a factory in China for and then we ask some questions. Okay, so besides the natural resources, do we have a hungry world? How come there are many people in obesity and at the same time people that are hungry? And it's a lot of questions that we can ask about the food system, whether it's a reasonable food system. And what is important for me is not only asking if it makes sense, but also asking about the resiliency. And I started it at the beginning of the talk. What does it need in order for us to have a resilient food system? Why do we need a resilient food system? Why do we need in Israel a resilient food system? So we could have thought in the corona and afterwards in the Ukraine and Russian war that everything is global and the sky will be open forever. But then we get this war, and in the war we definitely had huge problem of supplies. And I believe we had also had, I mean, Hamas did intentionally agroterrorism because it not only it really destroyed a lot of infrastructures of the farmers deliberately. And then we ask ourselves, okay, what does it mean to be resilient? If we're an island, like we always say that Israel is an island and we have, enemies from abroad and our borders could be closed, what does it mean that we can really be resilient? It means a very simple answer, by the way. It means that we need to have for everyone accessible food that will be nutritious for all and available. But how to get there, it's much more complex. And this is a lot of what I deal with in my work to find how can we make it resilient and how can we make it really effective. And in order to get a sustainable food system, I would say there are many factors of locality and factors of the source and how the source of the food and seasonally and how we are really responsible in how we the practices of how we grow our food. And two things that are very crucial, and especially in Israel. One is locality, to make sure that we can produce on a local level the amount that is needed for our society. And it sounds really simple, but it's not very much. It means that we need small farmers and small business, and we need to make sure that we are really giving them work fluently so they could really keep on their work and be in that position. And the second one is to be effective. And when we throw one third of what we produce, we're not effective. We are actually producing food and then we're throwing. And in that, we are using, we're using environmental, we have this environmental effect and we're using all these means three times. We're using the land, water, energy, topsoil for really producing the food from the first place, then transporting the food so we could all be buying it, purchasing, eating it, and then when we throw it away as garbage, then the third time that we are really using a lot of natural resources when we need to take care of it as waste. So for each tomato, let's say that we're throwing, we are using three times the natural resources. And I have a few more minutes, right, Jay, to say kind of what we're doing.
Yes, yes, you have more time for sure.
Okay. And so I will say that we are trying as much as possible to focus on upstream solutions. I strongly believe in upstream solutions on everything in environmental issues and sustainability issues, as much as possible to find where the problem started and find the solutions in order to prevent. Otherwise, it on downstream, it's much more effective and you can really save most of the time better the problem. And the idea is to try and find solutions both on policy level, national and local level, research, market solutions, and then personal solutions on all of the stages of the food system. So starting from where we grow our food, and these you can see kind of the some of the photos that I take during our field works. We countified what is perceived to be leftovers of farmers. You know, I was standing next to this farmer, and he told me, no, we're picking everything up. We're not losing everything. We're like 100% efficient. And I was like, really? Are you sure? And I was taking those pictures, and we are working a lot on what is leftovers, what is, what is considered to be something, vegetables and crops that you can sell and so on. And on the left, you can see a lot about the standard of beauty and whether the standard of beauty makes sense. No, it doesn't. Why do we take out all the, imperfect, inglorious, and all of that vegetables and fruits, and why we need to actually sell them and eat them? And then we're working a lot on market failures. And we have a lot of market failures in the food system. But I will say one of the most fascinating for me is about trying to implement dynamic pricing. We saw that in supermarkets, they are not letting us buy it in a lower price. They're just throwing it away, and most of the time putting economic on it, or really making sure that no one can really use it, instead of giving it in dynamic pricing and lower prices as the expiry date is getting closer. So those are kind of the market failures that I'm trying to prevent. And these are pictures from institutional catering, as you can assume where it's from. It's, the Israeli buffet and everything. And these are just only one table, two tables, three tables of leftovers of one of the hotels that we're working with. And how can we change behavior and perspective on hotels, caterings, restaurants, and so on. And then if we go again in of the kind of solutions, and how can we connect food tech for food waste and make sure that food tech really helps us in food waste. And I can say that not a lot of food tech is actually invested in food waste. It's not much of an interest. Israel is more about other things in food tech. We can elaborate on that. And what for me, and I said it earlier, maybe going back for Israelis for Blue and White agriculture is most fascinating is how do we make those connections back? How can we take the youth and the children and connect them? Tell them that, it doesn't, food is not from the supermarkets. And, in Hebrew, we say, I don't know if we have here people from Israel, Bali, Lo Bali, and so on. And how do we make people really understand and appreciate what is really grown and where it's grown and so on. And that's a one mission that I took, that we will connect back people to the original sources of food and so on. And for that also, we coined a term, Tzimbuz, which is a food waste reduction, and a national day, Food Waste Day, on the 12th of March. And actually, because of the war, we're just not mentioning Food Waste Month now. We are just in the midst of it. And basically to get to the people and not only raise awareness, because we are aware of many, many, many things, but actually be able to change practices, show people how they can change practices from the very, very, very small things of how to, a FIFO in your fridge, or how can you work with leftovers and so on. Really simple practices that can change behavior and change the way that people think about food, see food, and react to food. Because in the end, in our households, we waste out of 17 different reasons. So we need to influence them all. And my last slide about it is that basically the idea is to really be able to establish the idea that food security is part of national target. It needs to be part of the security perception, and we need it. We need it not less than what we need weapons and soldiers. We need food, and we need food to be independent, and above that, to make it a better and more efficient and more local and a more even a better one that would be based on circular economy and upcycle and decarbonized food system. So that's the short presentation. And Jay, I open it to questions.
Well, I have a couple before we get into people's questions. I want to clarify because when you talk about the locality of food, and Israel should be self-sufficient in its food production, I'm sure, by the way, our prime minister agrees with that, the autarky that he wants us to be Sparta, that
Sparta, yeah.
includes that includes food production. I think he even mentioned it once. But so what, how are we doing? In other words, what it seems like what you were trying to do, and this is another question that came up. So, in other words, trying to sell artisanal or high quality Israeli agricultural products abroad is the opposite of food security for Israel. And also, did you not run up against BDS? I mean, already, days after October 7th, everybody tells me here how terrible the atmosphere had already gotten for Israel. But so months later, were you not running up against that? And the bigger question is, and somebody asked this as well, and it's kind of like the title of this thing, how is Israel doing, and what is Israel doing to actually create food security? I mean, you've talked about it different ways you're trying to influence, but is that succeeding? Is Israel moving the needle? Are there government, public sector organizations, cities behind you in this? All of those
Okay.
questions. That was a
Okay,
lot
I'll
of
try to
questions.
answer all of them. I'm not sure I will
It was
remember
a
all.
lot of questions, yeah.
Let's start. I will start with the more the simple question you asked about how people reacted. So our enterprise was very it was very specific. It was very specific to help the small farmers in the north for the time of it. It didn't mean to be long running, and it was
Right.
the war that we didn't have a lot of flights and everything and so on. And yes, it's not locality, but I felt, and my partner felt that people are looking for new ways of solidarity. And they're searching for how to be with solidarity with Israel at a stage that already a lot of them already gave a lot of money and did all the things that were needed at the acute moment of the first half a year of the war. And the second stage was, okay, how can we create this solidarity and this connection through food? And yes, of course, when when you're exporting, it's not local and you have the transportation and so on. But at the same time, it connects between the ones that maybe they wouldn't have been in solidarity. And that really helped the small farmers and small business that needed that help. So that would be one answer. And actually I didn't get any at this specific enterprise. I didn't get any of what you say that everyone said to you, but I want to say that I got it recently. I think that people hate us. Really, really hate us. And just recently, 2 weeks ago, someone blocked me from a webinar, which is supposed to be a colleague of mine. I mean, he's also a very known food waste in Europe. And he wrote me that he doesn't give any services to Israel and he didn't let me enter his webinar. And
Wow.
the way I still hesitate how to, what to do with that. Okay, so that's one thing. And what you asked about how much people are concerned with it or not concerned with it. So I would say that the government is not really concerned about it. I mean, we're trying for years. I said, I mean, it's not from we didn't start working during the war about these issues. We're working from
Right.
2012, and they're not very concerned. None of the five ministries that could be part of it, there are five ministries that are part of the whole issues of food, five central and more than five if we want to look like broader on the issue. The only thing that was I would say gives a bit of optimistic a call for that is that the Ministry of Environment with the Ministry of Agriculture wrote a plan and they did involve a lot of different NGOs and business and different stakeholders and they created the plan and the plan is quite good. I mean, I have some criticism about it, but let's say that it's a quite a good plan. The only problem with the plan, and I'm talking about food waste plan, not a security, food security.
Ah, okay.
And when they created this food waste plan, I can say that it is quite good in the agenda, but it's not at all. They don't have any budget, and their budget is not approved, and the Ministry of Finance was not part of it. So it's very professional, and I would say, let's say it's quite good. I mean, 80% good, but the problem is that it's not being implemented and doesn't.
How long ago was this developed, this plan? In the last couple of years, or you're talking about
It's
previously?
a year ago,
A
around a year
year ago.
ago.
Okay.
And they did a very good, I mean, they did a very good process, but
Yeah.
it's not really working. Now, you asked about municipalities. Municipalities, in general, I can say that policy is really, really basic on these issues. And if there are any actions, most of them are about rescuing food and saving food and so on, which is important, but it's much easier and it's less solving the upstream problems. And yeah, I don't have any, good news about it. I don't think that Israel is really treating it as it should be treated.
But is there good news is this, by the way, when the organization you're talking about and your partner, that's in the organization Blue and White Food? What's it called?
No, no, that's the Natural Step Israel. The Natural Step
Oh,
Israel, I didn't mention it, by the way, thanks. That's like the same baby. The Natural Step Israel is the organization I started at 2012, and the premise of it is it's part of an international network, and the premise of the Natural Step Israel is one, leadership, how we talked about youth and how we need to connect people. But before connecting the youth, we have all the people that are already very important leaders that are in all the different sectors. And we have this flagship program called Chikma, which is mentoring them and exposing them to the issue of sustainability. And the second is to work on the food system resilience. And so
wow.
thank you for asking that. I didn't mention it.
Carl Roberts, is that the guy? Do I remember? Yeah. Is
Yeah.
he still around, involved?
Yeah, Professor Carl Henrik Robert, which was also
Ah,
my supervisor and the one that started the natural step back then more than 30 years ago. His idea was, how do we connect business to sustainability? Because the world is I mean, it's very disconnected. We have these NGOs and, civil society that was very much for environmental issues, and at the same time, business that are like the bad guys. And his agenda was, how can we connect and make everyone be part of it, because we won't get anywhere if we don't get I mean everyone on board. And that's the origin of TNS, and a lot of work on backcasting and upstream solutions and so on. And that's why they started here, the natural step.
and if I'm not mistaken, it was from him and from you that I learned about how he arrived at a definition of sustainability, which is a
Yeah,
very slippery concept.
yeah.
Sustainability means so many things to so many people, but that's another discussion.
And it's
Um,
still a problem, by the way. That is
and it's
something
still a
that is
problem,
really
right?
hard to grasp. Yeah.
Right. So in the end, to sum up what you just said, what, if anything, is Israel doing to make food production, or I would say the whole food cycle, more sustainable? Is there anything we can say that is actually happening? Like, if, for example, the hotels and the food waste, I realize it's only one little part of it. Is that increasing at least? I mean, if we had anybody in hotels, we would know, but let's say tourists come back to hotels. Are the hotels working on that issue in any real way? No.
There are some kind of different projects that we do or others do in order to improve. But if we look at it very, very clear and very, if I want to be very sincere about it, then I can say that food security and the need for it really is much higher on the agenda. And it is something that people are
It,
more talking about it and acknowledge it and know about it from the policy level and the municipality level. What does it mean in action and where the budget goes to? Then I'm sorry, I don't have any good news, because most of the budgets don't go there. They don't go to environment in general and not food insecurity and so on. I don't know if you saw the numbers of the amount of people living in insecurity in Israel. There was this last report saying that 2.6 million people are in insecurity in Israel. And
wow.
the funny thing is that 2.6 million tons of food are wasted each year.
Wow.
So it's like, it's not really a mishvah, a quotation, but It's horrible. So I would say in general, I think that it's more on the agenda and people more talk about it, but I don't feel that these resources are really still going there. Philanthropic.
I want to get to a bunch of questions that have arisen,
Yeah.
but just one more quick question to I thought there was, or might have been a few years ago, some high level policy committee. I think Tel Aviv University might have been involved, but others like the Dov Hanin is it part of the Dov Hanin climate change forum that exists in the president's office? Is there something like that for food and security?
We are part of this, of the
You are part of it. Okay.
Khanen's initiative, and our dynamic pricing is one of the initiatives that are trying to be promoted there. But still,
Right.
it's
And there's no other independent food security high level panel that still meets or
there is a now there is the committee of food. I'm trying to see how I translate it to English, but there is a lot of job trying to find out how to get food security for people in need. Of course, there are all
Oh,
those organizations that are working for years and doing an amazing work, Latet, Leket, and they are there
right.
even before and they
Right.
doing amazing job in rescuing food and so on. But when and at the same time, not but at the same time, when I am trying to look at upstream solution, how we support the system from the beginning till the minute that we save food, I think that there are a
Mhm.
lot of absent and a lot of gaps.
Okay. Um, is growing, I don't even know the answer to this. I've never really thought about this, but in nature protection, we worry a lot about invasive species and, non-native species. Is growing exotic foods like pineapple, guava, papaya, in agriculture, is there anything like that? Should we not be growing is there any such thing as non-native agriculture? And should we,
So
it,
I can say that the Ministry of Agriculture is doing amazing job and not working on some. I mean, there you can say that on some things they're doing amazing job and some not. I mean, when we try to understand what kind of farmers are there, what are they growing, where, if there are any decisions of what to import or what export, and how amount, and how are the decision being made, and why did they tell the farmers to grow more tomatoes and then the year afterwards they're not making sure that there is actually people to sell and so on. This is a part that is lacking, but at the same time I can say that they're doing a really good job on what to grow, how to grow, and Machon Volcani is doing amazing job. And yes, there are a few new initiatives that are trying to look at how to import and what to import and what kind of structure should be to Israel. But again, it's not something that still is in practice. Especially about the specific question that you ask, I don't know the answer. So, I mean, what kind should be or not should, this is more agriculture, which I'm not on that, part of the
right.
program.
Um, okay. Yeah, a lot of people are commenting about Leckett, and a woman heard the CEO of Leckett in America talked about how Leckett solicits leftovers for distribution. Do you work with Leckett? Or are they just one of the
And
partner?
so this is the idea. I think that what I'm trying to say here is that the idea is to find a way that the system first operates better, so we don't have so many leftovers. That's one. And the second is that we will be able to, make it more efficient on the way, on the different places that, food waste is actually happening. And the third is that we will be able to bring, I mean, if there are things that should be that you should sell more economically or make, for instance, the dynamic prices, it should be for everyone. I mean, before we go and we only give it for people in need, I mean, Israel is very expensive. Food cost is the second of the cost of every family. It's known to be one of the most expensive countries in the world, and food in specific is very expensive. So it doesn't make any sense that we will throw in the supermarket food. And again, the savings, a lot of times companies, and I can say corporates love it and supermarkets love it because it's kind of the easiest solution for them. And what we try to do is make them really work on their different business channels in order to prevent it from the first place and not be needing to save. And again, the save as much as it's perfect, it needs infrastructure. You need
Right.
to again to transport it, and you need to have the whole means and infrastructure in order to make this happen, the savings. So I say, why in the first place we need to take a lot of money for that? Let's make it more efficient from the first place so we can use the money for for social values without going through the whole food system and saving.
It seems to me like part of this problem is that, it's a wicked problem, not just a hard problem in the sense that it's very complex. And like I was going to ask you, if after the next government is formed, if you're offered to be a minister, would you want to be Minister of Agriculture? Would that be the place you could influence most? Or, I mean,
I
obviously
think it's in
finance, I
all.
guess.
I think it's in all. I mean, the issue of food is really, really. Is I mean, it could be influenced in the Ministry of Environment, in the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Health, and Ministry of Education.
And commerce,
And
no?
commerce, of course. And commerce was, we worked a lot with the Minister of Commerce in order to, for instance, work on dynamic pricing. I think that it really depends on which part of the cycle I want to influence more. But I would say that if, if I would be offered, not in this government, but,
Hmm.
in a
In the
different
next.
government, then I would say that the commerce and agriculture would be the most interesting for me.
Okay, well, that's good. We need fewer ministries, so I like that. But here's a question which I'm wondering about too. So, I lived in Israel 40 years and understood, I thought, pretty well how we produce food. There's kibbutzim, which used to be cooperative and now are essentially privatized, and there are moshavim, which are also similarly were
Yeah.
they means of production was cooperative and the selling was cooperative, but everybody farmed their own stuff. Now I understand that that system doesn't exactly work anymore, but the question is, are there none of these small farmers you've been working with part of cooperatives? Are they, is that not a thing, or they're very spread out, one here, one there? They're chavot, chavat bodedet, what do you like a individual
Yeah.
farm? Who are these people? Why are they not findable?
So it really depends on what you work, what the project is, and what you're looking for. But in general, understanding how farmers think and work is a huge thing. And I can say that I'm still learning it. Still, after all those years, I'm still surprised and learning. I can say that it really depends on your size, on which kind of, commerce you have. If you work with the big retailers, if you sell it by yourself, if you're part of Mushavim or Kibbutz, if there is a kind of, eco community that sells it. The ones that specifically we helped was because of the war. It doesn't make it's not relevant for today because
Hmm.
it's not for, routine life. But we helped them because they specifically lost families, lost workers, and were
Right.
really, really small and not connected to anyone that were not their supply chain. But in general, we try to work with everyone, and it's very, very complicated because the farmers are very conservative, and you will hear it not only from my side, but also from people that work more in food tech and try to agrotech and try to implement different kinds of technologies in order to make better yields, whatever the reason is, that they're very conservative and it's really hard to change their routines. I think it's like infrastructures. I mean, it's like they're very
Right.
conservative and so on. So it's 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 very hard. What we try to do is try to find a way to talk about, but it's kind of we are at the end, so I will just drop it and we won't have
Right.
enough time to talk about it. But I believe that something that could really help is if we create a regional centers and regional centers that will be able to create a circular economy of farmers, small
Oh,
business, community, education, and we'll combine everything. We'll combine direct selling. We'll combine work on the leftovers of the farmers. We'll create a win-win solution of the leftovers of the farmers and the small business that can really be, I have tomatoes today. Can you make pasta from it and so on? Like really, really small connections that make a big contribution, and at the same time involve children, they should volunteer and be part of it and see it in their eyes and be very connected to it. So that's kind of one of my dreams. Except dynamic pricing, this is another dream of how to create it on a more original. Although we're very small, and I guess that some of the people from the US are like, "What? You're a region? You're not even a region in the US, the whole Israel."
Hey, we're
But
the
at
size of New Jersey. Come
yeah,
on.
but I still think that our scale has also benefits, and we can be more smaller in some of the practices.
Right. Um, are there like somebody's writing, they remember seeing years ago sug bet products, like lower quality agricultural products being sold separately, like in supermarkets. Is that still a thing?
Not so
No,
much. No.
no. And quick two definitions. Defined dynamic pricing and
Okay.
define sustainable farming.
Wow. In 4 minutes. Okay.
No,
Eh,
just 2 minutes. No,
Okay.
take four.
I see now one of the comments popped up. Too bad. Too bad was about the selling of produce secondhand for everyone
Yes.
who
Yeah, that
want.
was
Okay, yeah,
Hillary.
it's
Thank
too
you,
bad,
Hillary.
and it connects me to dynamic pricing because the idea of dynamic pricing is very, very simple. It means that when produce gets to its expiry date, as it reaches to its expiry date, we are lowering the price. So let's take an example, a yogurt, when we are about 5 days of its expiration day, then we can lower the price 50%. And then when we are at the last day of expiration day, then we can lower the price by 90%. So if yogurt, costs 9 shekels, then it will cost 4.5 shekels 5 days, 4 days
I see.
before, and 1 shekel at the same day. And the idea is that when we lower the price, then people, all of us, and it's not only for people in need, all of us can buy our produce in lower prices. We can, buy things that maybe are too expensive, but we can be exposed to other kinds of, produce that usually we don't buy.
Well,
And then,
excuse me, quickly,
yeah.
because you gave it, yogurt, which is a stamped product with the date, but produce, tomato might be good for 3, 4 days in the market, 8 days. Like in other words, how do you know when? Who determines when the dynamic pricing begins if there's no expiration date?
Okay, great. Even in let's talk first about those produce that you do have expiration days, which are most of the things except, as you say, fresh things like bread
Vegetable.
and vegetables and
No, things
fruits.
that have an expiration date, I understand. You know
Okay, and
exactly.
what I want to say about dynamic pricing, because yes, the idea is that currently they are just being most of them just thrown away, and then you need another transportation to take them, and then treat them as waste and garbage and so on, and instead of selling it in a reduced price, and we have it in all different, other markets. We have it in electronic and in fashion and so on. Not why not on food? We
Right. And
do
by the
see
way,
it.
why not giving it away on the day of expiration? You know,
Okay. And what happens now? And we have a lot of people that documented it and tell us that on that day, supermarkets don't give it to their employees. They don't want them to take it. They put, economic, how do you say it in English?
bleach. Yeah, bleach.
Bleach. They bleach it so
Ugh,
people won't be able to take it.
that's terrible.
They really make it, they really make sure that no one knows about it and no one can really use
Wow.
it. And I can say that I was a lot of times on, those fridge of the supermarkets, the one that
Yeah.
they are about to send it back. And I saw a lot of things that I said, why they're there. I mean, there is still 5 more days, 6 more days. So it's a lot about, prestige and how expensive my company will look at. So the idea of dynamic pricing is that to make it available for everyone and reduce the prices. And why it doesn't happen, then that's a whole different discussion. But this is something that totally needs to happen, in legislation. How do you do it in vegetables and fruits? Then the same like they do today. I mean, they decide when to put it on the shelf and when to take it off the shelf. So the same, likewise, they can do it, in that. And I want to say, usually people say at this stage, and I don't see the comments, so I'm not sure if someone said it, yeah, but there are too good to go, or there is one app in Israel that works, and in some supermarkets you do have these discounts. So yes, that's true. The idea is that dynamic pricing would be the way that the economic of food works. So it would be on everything, everywhere, and not just in places that they have those. different incentives to do it in specific times. So it won't be only on
Wow.
bakery, but on everything.
Unfortunately, we're at the top of the hour. Sustainable farming, obviously, that means fewer or not using pesticides, insecticides. I don't know.
Sustainable farming basically means that to look how you produce, I mean, look at the soil and the situation, how you use it in terms of what kind, I'm starting to, now I need to talk fast, of which kind of, chemicals you use or not use, what are you growing, what next to what, all the regenerative farming, that is a huge thing to look at.
Right.
Basically means
Oh,
look at the farming and how you do it from a point of view of the whole life cycle of the produce.
um, Michal, thank you so much. We're gonna, with the comments, will be saved as well, and you need to look at them afterwards because people have a lot of suggestions and want to tell you
Okay.
what's going on, interesting things in Detroit, in the Netherlands. Uh, People have different things, Spain. So you can take a look at them. My recommendation is, I've heard you once in a while on TV or on the radio. Have you ever been interviewed by Reno Tzroor? I mean, have you? Because
I'm not
I mean, a long time ago,
not sure.
because you hit two of his top. I mean, this is really what he would love to talk about, I think, most of the time. He talks way too much about food prices without really getting into this issue. He like his consumerism and his social activism are together equal you. So he should get into that. I wish, if I knew him, I'd send him a link to
And
this.
if I can say, I do want to say, besides, thank you, Jay, for inviting me, that I would love any idea, collaboration, thinking, ideas. Feel free to write me everywhere. I'm LinkedIn, on our site, email, whatever. Really would love hearing more.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Michal.
Jay.
We'll be in touch. Anybody wants to write to Michal, can't find her, happy to pass on
Yeah,
any mails. Nama, thank you very much for back office at home, and please make sure that Michal gets a copy of the comments here. This webinar is recorded; it'll be online in the next day or two on our site. So, thank you very, very much. Toda.
thank you.
B'teyavon, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye, Michal.
Bye
Toda. Laila
bye.
tov. Bye.